Section 9 of Confessions, volumes 3 and 4. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Recording by Martin Geeson. Confessions, volumes 3 and 4, by Jacques Rousseau. Anonymously translated. Section 9. The chapter of Geneva, where so many princes and bishops formerly thought it an honor to be seated, though in exile it lost its ancient splendor, retained without any diminution its pride. To be admitted, you must either be a gentleman or doctor of the Sorbonne. If there is a pardonable pride, after that derived from personal merit, it is doubtless that arising from birth, though in general priests having laymen in their service treat them with sufficient haughtiness, and thus the canons behaved to poor Lemaitre. The chanter in particular, who was called the Abbe de Vidonne, in other respects a well-behaved man, but too full of his nobility, did not always show him the attention his talents merited. Monsieur le Maître could not bear these indignities patiently, and this year, during Passion Week, they had a more serious dispute than ordinary. At an institution dinner that the bishop gave the canons, and to which Monsieur le Maître was always invited, the abbe failed in some formality, adding at the same time some harsh words, which the other could not digest. He instantly formed the resolution to quit them the following night, nor could any consideration make him give up his design, though Madame de Warrens, whom he went to take leave of, spared no pains to appease him. He could not relinquish the pleasure of leaving his tyrants embarrassed for the Easter feast, at which time he knew they stood in greatest need of him. He was most concerned about his music, which he wished to take with him, but this could not easily be accomplished, as it filled a large case and was very heavy, and could not be carried under the arm. Madame de Warrens did what I should have done in her situation, and indeed what I should yet do. After many useless efforts to retain him, seeing he was resolved to depart, whatever might be the event, she formed the resolution to give him every possible assistance. I must confess Le Maître deserved it of her, for he was, if I may use the expression, dedicated to her service, in whatever appertained to either his art or knowledge, and the readiness with which he obliged gave a double value to his complaisance. Thus she only paid back, on an essential occasion, the many favors he had been long conferring on her; though I should observe, she possessed a soul that to fulfill such duties had no occasion to be reminded of previous obligations. Accordingly, she ordered me to follow Le Maître to Lyons, and to continue with him as long as he might have occasion for my services. She has since avowed that a desire of detaching me from Venture had a great hand in this arrangement. She consulted Claude Anet about the conveyance of the above mentioned case. He advised that instead of hiring a beast at Annecy, which would infallibly discover us, it would be better at night to take it to some neighboring village, and there hire an ass to carry it to Seyssel, in which, being in the French dominions, we should have nothing to fear. This plan was adopted. We departed the same night at 7, and Madam de Warrens, under pretence of paying my expenses, increased the purse of poor Le Maitre by an addition that was very acceptable. Claude Anet, the gardener, and myself carried the case to the first village, then hired an ass, and the same night reached Seyssel. I think I have already remarked that there are times in which I am so unlike myself that I might be taken for a man of a direct opposite disposition. I shall now give an example of this. Monsieur Reydelet, curate of Seyssel, was canon of St. Peter's, consequently known to Monsieur le Maitre, and one of the people from whom he should have taken most pains to conceal himself. My advice, on the contrary, was to present ourselves to him, and under some pretext entreat entertainment, as if we visited him by consent of the chapter. Le Maitre adopted the idea, which seemed to give his revenge the appearance of satire and waggery. In short, we went boldly to Reydelet, who received us very kindly. Le Maitre told him he was going to Bellay by desire of the bishop, that he might superintend the music during the Easter holidays, and that he proposed returning that way in a few days. To support this tale, I told 100 others, so naturally that Monsieur Reydelet thought me a very agreeable youth, and treated me with great friendship and civility. We were well regaled and well lodged. Monsieur Reydelet scarcely knew how to make enough of us, and we parted the best friends in the world, with a promise to stop longer on our return. We found it difficult to refrain from laughter, or wait till we were alone to give free vent to our mirth. Indeed, even now, the bare recollection of it forces a smile, for never was waggery better or more fortunately maintained. This would have made us merry during the remainder of our journey, if Monsieur le Maitre, who did not cease drinking, had not been 2 or 3 times attacked with a complaint that he afterwards became very subject to, and which resembled an epilepsy. These fits threw me into the most fearful embarrassments, from which I resolved to extricate myself with the first opportunity. According to the information given to Monsieur Reydelet, we passed our Easter holidays at Bellay, and though not expected there, were received by the music master and welcomed by everyone with great pleasure. Monsieur le Maitre was of considerable note in his profession, and indeed merited that distinction. The music master of Bellay, who was fond of his own works, endeavored to obtain the approbation of so good a judge; for besides being a connoisseur, Monsieur le Maitre was equitable, neither a jealous, ill-natured critic, nor a servile flatterer. He was so superior to the generality of country music masters, and they were so sensible of it, that they treated him rather as their chief than a brother musician. Having passed 4 or 5 days very agreeably at Bellay, we departed, and continuing our journey without meeting with any accidents, except those I have just spoken of, arrived at Lyons, and were lodged at Notre Dame de Pitié. While we waited for the arrival of the before mentioned case, which by the assistance of another lie, and the care of our good patron M. de Reydelet, we had embarked on the Rhone, M. le Maitre went to visit his acquaintance, and among others Father Cateau, a Cordelier, who will be spoken of hereafter, and the Abbe d'Ortan, Count of Lyons, both of whom received him well, but afterwards betrayed him, as will be seen presently. Indeed, his good fortune terminated with M. Reydelet. 2 days after our arrival at Lyons, as we passed a little street not far from our inn, Le Maitre was attacked by one of his fits, but it was now so violent as to give me the utmost alarm. I screamed with terror, called for help, and naming our inn, entreated some one to bear him to it. Then, while the people were assembled and busy round a man that had fallen senseless in the street, he was abandoned by the only friend on whom he could have any reasonable dependence. I seized the instant when no one heeded me, turned the corner of the street, and disappeared. Thanks to heaven, I have made my third painful confession. If many such remained, I should certainly abandon the work I have undertaken. Of all the incidents I have yet related, a few traces are remaining in the places where I have lived, but what I have to relate in the following book is almost entirely unknown. These are the greatest extravagances of my life, and it is happy they had not worse conclusions. My head, if I may use the simile, screwed up to the pitch of an instrument it did not naturally accord with, had lost its diapason. In time it returned to it again, when I discontinued my follies, or at least gave in to those more consonant to my disposition. This epoch of my youth I am least able to recollect, nothing having passed sufficiently interesting to influence my heart to make me clearly retrace the remembrance. In so many successive changes, it is difficult not to make some transpositions of time or place. I write absolutely from memory, without notes or materials to help my recollection. Some events are as fresh in my idea as if they had recently happened, but there are certain chasms which I cannot fill up but by the aid of recital as confused as the remaining traces of those to which they refer. It is possible, therefore, that I may have erred in trifles, and perhaps shall again, but in every matter of importance I can answer that the account is faithfully exact, and with the same veracity the reader may depend I shall be careful to continue it. My resolution was soon taken after quitting Le Maitre. I set out immediately for Annecy. The cause and mystery of our departure had interested me for the security of our retreat. This interest, which entirely employed my thoughts for some days, had banished every other idea. But no sooner was I secure and in tranquillity than my predominant sentiment regained its place. Nothing flattered, nothing tempted me, I had no wish but to return to Madame de Warrens. The tenderness and truth of my attachment to her had rooted from my heart every imaginable project and all the follies of ambition. I conceived no happiness but living near her, nor could I take a step without feeling that the distance between us was increased. I returned, therefore, as soon as possible, with such speed, and with my spirits in such a state of agitation, that though I recall with pleasure all my other travels, I have not the least recollection of this, only remembering my leaving Lyons and reaching Annecy. Let any one judge whether this last event can have slipped my memory, when informed that on my arrival I found Madam de Warrens was not there, having set out for Paris. I was never well informed of the motives of this journey. I am certain she would have told me had I asked her, but never was man less curious to learn the secrets of his friend. My heart is ever so entirely filled with the present, or with past pleasures, which become a principal part of my enjoyment, that there is not a chink or corner for curiosity to enter. All that I conceive from what I heard of it is that in the revolution caused at Turin by the abdication of the King of Sardinia, she feared being forgotten, and was willing, by favor of the intrigues of M. d'Aubonne, to seek the same advantage in the court of France, where she has often told me she should have preferred it, as the multiplicity of business there prevents your conduct from being so closely inspected. If this was her business, it is astonishing that on her return she was not ill received. Be that as it will, she continued to enjoy her allowance without any interruption. Many people imagined she was charged with some secret commission, either by the bishop, who then had business at the court of France, where he himself was soon after obliged to go, or some one yet more powerful, who knew how to insure her a gracious reception at her return. If this was the case, it is certain the ambassadress was not ill chosen, since being young and handsome, she had all the necessary qualifications to succeed in a negotiation. End of Section 9. Recording by Martin Geeson in Hazelmere, Surrey.